Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Dandavat pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Nice to see all of you.
Nice to see you also.
I have never been to Russia, so now I get a chance to associate with you. Krishna's mercy on me.
Hopefully, after some time, you will come directly.
When it's warm. When it's warm.
Yeah, yeah.
In the summertime.
Yeah, summertime. Maybe next festival. We have some festival in the beach, Black Sea. We just finished 2 weeks ago this festival.
When I was a student, I studied some Russian history.
Really?
Yeah, I was always interested in Russia.
I remember something from your young age.
I remember Napoleon's failed march on Moscow.
Okay, Napoleon. Yes. Okay, many devotees already joined. Madmahan Prabhu, are you here? Cannot hear him.
He's essential.
He's essential, yes. Okay. He will translate simultaneously, I think, so to Russian.
Yeah, otherwise, without him, I have no way of speaking.
Really? Maybe a few words.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, that's universal.
Yes, yes. Hare Krishna. Yes. Okay, okay.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they cleaned the entire Gundicha temple just by chanting Hare Krishna. They communicated everything, who needed a bucket, who needed water, where to clean. So you can get a lot done with Hare Krishna.
Yes.
We had a man who had a stroke and he lost his ability to speak. The only thing he could say was the Hare Krishna mantra. His name is Pranji Propat. And the thing is that it lasted for about 3 months and then he got his speech back.
Mm.
And he told me the happiest time of his life was when all he could say was Hare Krishna. He said there was no prajapa, no fight with his wife. Everything was great.
Yeah, perfect.
He said it was really, he kind of wished he could go back to it.
Yes.
We had another guy, I don't want to hang you up, but we had another guy,
okay,
initiated devotee. He had an accident. He was getting some work done, his tonsils, in his throat. He had a surgery and they cut a nerve. He couldn't taste anything.
Wow.
He's South Indian. His wife is a fantastic cook. Everything he ate tasted like straw, except when he came to the temple and took the Raj Bhoga, he could taste it. There was no medical reason, but the only thing he could taste was prasadam. He started coming every day for prasadam.
Okay, yes, we can start, I think so.
Do we have Madan Mohan?
Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj is here also. I see.
All right, so I sent you guys a PowerPoint, so we need to share that screen. We need to get that going, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Madmahan is here, but he told, maybe you can explain. Madmahan, ты можешь на английском сейчас сказать.
Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Madan Mohandas is here and not here at the same time. The problem is that I am in.
So you're manifest, unmanifest.
Yes, and the Mandalapati will help you put it up on the screen. The problem is that I'm in a part of Russia which I cannot name online, and that part of Russia is under sanctions, and Zoom is not working here.
I'm a puppet in your hands. You just tell me what to do.
Я говорю на английском. Zoom is not working here, so I'm translating.
Okay, but we're not seeing the PowerPoint.
Okay, we will see.
Well,
I can share it from my screen, but it will be English.
No, we will prepare PowerPoint. Мандалапати сделай, тогда все, что нужно сделать.
Shall I introduce Maharaj in the meantime?
Yes, of course.
As long as you keep it very short.
Yes, definitely. Don't worry.
Nice to see you, Maharaj.
Nice to see you. So I'm very happy to introduce to all of you Badrinarayan Maharaj. He is a very senior disciple of Srila Prabhupada. He's serving in California, United States, and for many, many years he has been a member of governing body commission.
Thus the gray hair.
He is a very active member, probably the most outspoken member of the whole GBC. And whenever he speaks, everyone's attention is always very, kind of bound by his speech. He is a very powerful speaker. He gives very beautiful lectures, and his Prabhupada stories are the best stories, the way how he describes the stories. And he's also very devoted to Prabhupada's organization, ИСККОН. So it's not an accident that we asked Badrinarayan Maharaj to speak about this topic, particular topic about the organizational structure of ИСККОN. He is definitely the best person to present this topic and to share his understanding of this topic to all of you. So that's it. My introduction is over. Now I'm giving the floor to you.
And my response is that may someday your words become true in regards to me. I take it as an encouragement that that is the standard I should come to. So may your words become true, Maharaj.
Okay.
You are one of my heroes, frankly, but that's another issue.
Okay. Thank you. We will continue with you speaking now.
So we're waiting to see the slides from the PowerPoint. That's what we're waiting to see. Okay, that's me, but where's the PowerPoint?
Just 1 minute, Maharaj.
Just now coming. Hey, it's like India. Krishna, 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 hey. Should I tell a Prabhupada pastime in the meantime while we're waiting?
Yeah, it will be great.
So, it is a wonderful thing. I think Russia covers 9 time zones, isn't it? Okay, well, it's not much feedback. So do I hear back from anybody? How do I know that the universe is out there?
Now we have translation for Russian.
All right, so we're ready to go? I feel a disconnect here. Madan Mohan, can you hear me?
He can hear you, but he cannot answer you because he has some problem with Zoom, but he will translate everything, every your word. translate properly.
And who are you, Prabhu, that I'm hearing from?
Mrs. Achyutatma Das.
Okay, so Prabhu, can you stay with me? And when I ask a question, can you answer so I know that someone's actually there?
Yes, I will be here.
All right, Prabhu, thank you very much. So I have to follow on my screen because I don't speak Russian. So hang with me for a sec. I guess I have to get that going. So the GBC system was not created by the GBC members, or it was not the brainchild or bright idea of us. Rather, it was given to us by Srila Prabhupada. So we are simply carrying out Srila Prabhupada's direction, Prabhupada's instructions. Next. Well, we got to see the slide. Ah, there we go. Thank you, Prabhu. So Srila Prabhupada was the Senapata Bhakta. He was the great general predicted by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself and confirmed again by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So we are not participants in a simple one point in history, but we are participating in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission, beginning 500 years ago and going to the entire golden age of Kali Yuga for the next 10,000 years. So this principle of how to manage Mahaprabhu's society, ＩСККОN, this was given to us by Srila Prabhupada, and I'm speaking to you now, and we're speaking to future generations. Next. Oh, I got to do the next too. Our narration, the story of the GBC, this presentation, it begins in Vrindavan in the early 1960s. Prabhupada staying at the Radha Damodar temple, 1960. He's given up his family life. He's getting ready to take sannyas. And he's thinking about the impossible mission. That's what Prabhupada describes it. The impossible mission his Guru Maharaj has given him. He's meditating on it. So next. We see Srila Prabhupada. If you've been to the Radha Damodar temple in Vrindavan, you know that looking out that window, we see Prabhupada looking out that window. And looking out that window, you can see the Bhajan Kutir and the Samadhi of Rupa Goswami. So here we have Prabhupada. By the way, if you haven't read it, there's a poem Prabhupada wrote at this time called Vrindavan Bhajan. Somehow or other, beg, borrow, or steal, but get that poem, Vrindavan Bhajan. It is a profound meditation on the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with so many things. So here is Srila Prabhupada in that mood of Vrindavan Bhajan. And he's meditating on he's all alone. And he's meditating on what happened to his spiritual master's mission. He's been given the order to take it to the West. And he's considering the history. Next. Here is that view out that window. Prabhupada is seeing the Bhajan Kutir and then the Samadhi of Srila Rupa Goswami. And he's meditating on how do I execute the order of my spiritual master. Next. How to avoid repeating the Gaudiya Math history. The fact of the matter is that the Gaudiya Math under Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was extremely powerful. He had a steamship that was sailing up and down the coast of India, putting on festivals. He had a train cars that were traveling on trains all across India. They would pull into the platform of a big city, and within a few hours, they would put up all their tents, displays, exhibits, full prasadam. They'd do a 2 or 3 hour program right there on the train platform, pack everything up, and move on the train to the next city. He was so powerful that he brought the governor of Bengal. The governor of Bengal was the second in charge under the Viceroy of India. The governor of Bengal came out to Mayapur, actually built the road that we now drive on from Calcutta to Mayapur on the request of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So he was incredibly powerful, the Gaudiya Math. And yet, within a few years after the departure of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the whole thing had crumbled. I had a very moving experience. I first went to India in 1973. And I remember going to the Yog Pit, the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then I went to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's house. You know, you can go further down the road and you can go to his house. And the Gaudiya Math, the ashrams are there. Nobody was there. The whole place was practically asleep. All that was there was some old man reading a newspaper and some dogs barking. So I could walk all through the place. And I pushed open one door, just like you see a building here, and I pushed open one door. And there was the printing press of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the Brihat Madanga. But it had laundry hanging on it. It had brahmachari kopans hanging on the press to dry. All the typeset, you know, the lettering that you lay out to print, all of that was thrown all over the floor. It almost brought me to tears that this is what the powerful mission of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had become. So as happened to them, can also happen to us. It is a cautionary tale. So that is the point here. Hold on a sec. How to avoid the history of the Gaudiya Math unraveling. We should not think we're immune from that. So next. This is from Prabhupada's purport to the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela. You can see. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, at the time of his departure, requested all of his disciples to form a governing body and conduct missionary activities cooperatively. So this is not our creation. It's not even Prabhupada's creation. It is the order and vision of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Next. Continuing in that purport, Prabhupada writes, despite the spiritual master's order to form a governing body and execute the missionary activities of the Gaudiya Math, the two unauthorized factions began litigation that is still going on 40 years with no decision. So they're fighting. They immediately split into two factions and fought. Next. This is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. What happened was that they decided amongst themselves, no, you can't have a GBC body. Same thing actually happened in ISKCON, frankly. We need to have a self-effulgent acharya. We need to have a single acharya at the head of the math, the traditional. They had no idea how to run a multi-guru, temples around the world. They had no vision. They thought, well, every math has an acharya who initiates, and that's how it runs. So, but rather we find Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writing December 31st, 1936. His instruction these are his last instructions. Form a governing body of 10 to 12 persons for managing the mission's work. That's the seed of the GBC. Governing body was his words. Next. It'd be good if we can speed up these slides because it takes quite some time to change. So we need the next slide. Ah, there we go. Maybe it's just the time lag of the distance. So this is Prabhupada writing in October 1969, early days. He's writing to Tamal Krishna Goswami. In the future, we can form a central governing body for the whole institution. So Prabhupada at the very beginning, even before coming to America, and then once his mission started rolling, he was meditating on how do we prevent the mission from unraveling? How will it be managed? And he starts in 1969. Prabhupada, if nothing less, and of course he was much more, but Prabhupada was an expert teacher. Prabhupada very carefully gave instructions. Rabindra Sarup Prabhu told me one time that Prabhupada had him make a deposit. Someone had given Prabhupada some money, and Prabhupada wanted it deposited in the BBT account. Rabindra said Prabhupada, he never got such clear instructions. Prabhupada told him exactly what to do, where to go, how to deposit it. And when he came back, Prabhupada reviewed it. Did he do it right? Mukunda Maharaj told me the same thing. So Prabhupada was not careless. This was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. So right in the beginning, 1969, he's laying the seeds for the GBC. Next. Here we are, 1970. I was actually there by Krishna's grace. This is the San Francisco Ratha Yatra. So in 1970, in San Francisco, Prabhupada started the GBC. Next. Here's Prabhupada's instructions. As we've increased our volume of activities, now I think a governing body commission, hereinafter referred to as the GBC, should be established. I'm getting old, 75 years old. Therefore, at any time, I may be out of the scene. Therefore, I think it necessary to give instruction to my disciples how they shall manage the whole institution. Next. So after establishing the GBC, here he's writing in a letter. This is just a few weeks after the San Francisco Ratha Yatra, a few weeks after that statement that we just read. Srila Prabhupada writes, he's starting to roll out, he's starting to manifest the principle of the GBC. So Prabhupada writes to Upendra on August 6, 1970. Now I have set up the governing body commission to handle management, questions of philosophy, and personal problems. So it's not just bureaucratic management, but philosophy, personal problems, counseling the devotees. Next. And Prabhupada drummed this home. I'm moving through the years here. He's saying, and there's many, many letters. If you read Prabhupada's letters books, you find many, many letters like this. So here he's writing in 1972. So far your question, how far should the orders of my duly appointed officers like GBC, etc., be obeyed and followed? The answer is that they must always be followed exactly as he says. Have you not heard me on this point? I mean, we'll get into the details a little bit more, but Prabhupada was very firm. You have to follow the GBC. Next. Spiritual authority was not always enough. Sometimes people say, well, you have resolutions and there's we have to take an oath of allegiance to serve Srila Prabhupada, and we've got bylaws and you know, this is all mundane management. You should just Prabhupada just managed by inspiration. We were inspired, so we did whatever Prabhupada said. But that's not the truth. That's not the history. Here it says spiritual authority is not always enough. Next. Before I forget, I should mention, you know, Jiva Goswami, the author of the Sat Sandarbhas, worshipper of Radha Damodar, such a saint, you know, the start of the Sankirtan movement, sent out, you know, copied the books and sent them to Bengal. So such a powerful personality, Srila Jiva Goswami. He also kept all of the wills, the 6 Goswamis, they all had wills. They had their temples. You know, you've got, you know, Radha, you've got Govindaji Mandir, you've got Madan Mohan, you've got all the different mandirs, you've got Radha Raman. You have, frankly, you've got the Parakram path all around the Radhakund and Shamakund built by Raghunath Das Goswami. Jiva Goswami personally kept all of the wills and all of the deeds to the land. So Jiva Goswami, you know, in the mood of the first GBC, was keeping track of all the legal documents. You can see them. You go to the library at the Radha Damodar temple, and you can see the wills of the 6 Goswamis that were kept by Jiva Goswami. So it's not a mundane thing. It's not just mundane management. So spiritual authority was not always enough. This is the history. Next. The temple president in Hawaii, Gaur Sundar, without any authorization, without any warning, sold the Hawaii temple. Devotees were just thrown out on the street. The devotees in Tulsi Devi thrown out on the street, and he took the money and left. Prabhupada was shocked. So Prabhupada was so surprised, you know, saintly Srila Prabhupada, that someone would do this. He issued what was titled across the top of the page, topmost urgency. And it was a directive that Prabhupada had sent to every temple president and every GBC. So I quote, Srila Prabhupada sent out a directive dated July 22nd, 1974, titled Topmost Urgency. It ordered that amendments immediately be added to all official registrations, documents, constitutions, incorporation papers, etc. This is Srila Prabhupada personally making sure that all the properties, the deities, everything was secure legally. Next. Just now coming. Oh, Govinda. Srila Prabhupada wanted legal control. Don't worry, we're talking about the heavy side, the legal side first. We'll get to the other side. Don't worry, how it takes cooperation and love and trust. Don't worry. This is one side of the coin. We're going to present the other side of the coin in a moment. But just so you know the history, Srila Prabhupada wanted legal control. He wanted, because it was Krishna's property. He wanted Krishna's property secured under Krishna's lotus feet. He didn't want some rascal, just like Hanuman wanted to get Sita back from Ravan. You know, Prabhupada did not want Lakshmi lost to the Asuric principles. And there it is. So here's Prabhupada saying, in this directive of management, it shall be clearly understood that no real estate may be purchased or sold by any officer of the society without the express permission of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of ＩSKCON. Next. This is the, okay. There shall be a governing board committee of trustees appointed by founder Acharya His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Prabhupada wanted the GBCs established as property trustees to guard the properties. Next. I hope we're on the right slide here. I think we're a slide off. All right. The previous slide said the GBC is to act as the instrument of the execution of the will of his divine grace. That is the duty of the GBC. They're meant to execute Prabhupada's will. Now, this slide says this is an oath of allegiance that Prabhupada personally wrote. Oath of allegiance. And this comes from, there was a devotee Manasvi who ran off with some money in India. Regarding Manasvi, you should immediately prosecute. Prabhupada was heavy. I have received today the oath of allegiance duly signed by him and notarized. Therefore, I wanted this declaration immediately prosecute. So Prabhupada was very heavy and he wanted the GBC to be firm and make sure that Krishna's property is maintained and safely guarded. Next. This is the Fiji situation. Fiji, you know, is a group of islands in the South Pacific. And there was a very, very wealthy businessman, Vasudev Prabhu. And he wanted to build a bunch of temples and he wanted them all in ISKCON's name. He wanted to raise money in ISKCON's name, but he didn't want to be under the GBC. Prabhupada wrote to him, even though the man was very wealthy and offering so much facility, he ultimately built the Kaliya Christian temple there in Fiji. If you want to consider this project as an ISKCON project, then you must abide by the orders and directions of the GBC, which you do not like to do. And Prabhupada was quite honest. You know, Prabhupada knew the man, was a good man, wanted to serve, but he didn't want to be under the GBC. He wanted to be independent, do his own thing, whatever he wanted to do. But Prabhupada, we have standards. We have, there was a group here, I won't mention their name, but a Gaudiya Math group. They had a program. They had a rented hall. The man who was from the rental company bringing the stage and the chairs and the lights, he was just a karmi from the rent. They asked him, hey, you want to get initiated? He didn't even know who Krishna was. They initiated him. I mean, that's an extreme example, but we have standards. We have standards of philosophy. We have standards of deity worship. You know, we're following in the footsteps of the 6 Goswamis. So Prabhupada wanted it. That's why it wasn't just a control factor, but it was to maintain. Prabhupada perfectly crafted ISKCON for delivering the conditioned souls. He knew time, place, and circumstance. Prabhupada was in Times Square. He was in the West. He knew our mentality, and he perfectly realized the teachings of the Goswamis. So he perfectly realized the principles of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he knew the mentality, the modern Western mentality. And by Western, I'm including, developed nations. I'm including Russia, of course. So my point is that Prabhupada wanted those, because if we're going to, well, we'll get there in a minute. I don't want to jump ahead. But these things mattered. That he wanted the GBC because he wanted not just to maintain the property, but the standards, the philosophy. Okay, next. I've tried to establish in these slides, it's a progression from 1969. Now we're looking for the next slide we need. Prabhupada's last days. Yeah, here we go. So we've gone all the way from 1969. Actually, we've gone from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's instructions. We have his instructions upon his disappearance day. He's giving his instructions, establish a GBC. Prabhupada starts saying the same thing in 1969, establishes it in 1970, and keeps driving, hammering, drumming the point home. Now we have, here we are, Prabhupada's last days in Vrindavan, 1977. Here we have in Krishna Balaram temple, we have Prabhupada, the first line of Prabhupada's will. Next. Traditionally, in the British legal system, and the British legal system is the same system, largely the Indian legal system is the British legal system. And the tradition in the Indian legal system and the British legal system is the first line of a will determines who will be the executor, who will manage and carry out the statements, requests explained later on in the will. So who's the personality, the body responsible for executing the will? That's the first line. And the first line in Prabhupada's will says, the governing body commission, GBC, will be the ultimate managing authority for the entire society for Krishna consciousness. Here we find the words ultimate. We find entire international society for Krishna consciousness. These are Prabhupada's words in his will. Prabhupada was extremely careful. Satsarupa Swami told me that he gave Prabhupada a nice pen, a nice cross pen, you know, a nice good pen. He said 3 years later, he was traveling with Prabhupada as his secretary. Prabhupada had the same pen in the same box that it was given to him with the same rubber band around it. So, you know, me, I lose a pen every few days. I've lost a pen. Prabhupada had the same pen, same box, same rubber band. Prabhupada was Krishna conscious. Krishna conscious means he was conscious of everything. So Prabhupada was very, very careful. And in his will, he chose it. He knew this was his final statement. And he establishes the GBC. So next. Okay, so this principle of the GBC, and we're going to get into it a little further, but you know, we have free will, we have independence, we have our own creative spirit, but every well-organized institution needs a final arbitrator. There needs to be, in the USA and so many places, there's a Supreme Court. And when the Supreme Court makes its final decision, that's it. It's binding. So there has to be, this principle is found even in democracies all over the world, that there is a final arbitrator. Otherwise, it's just chaos. There has to be. Any institution requires some organization. Okay, next. Here we get into the other side. I've talked about the firm role that Prabhupada wanted for the GBC. But ultimate does not mean absolute. It's not a dictatorship, and it's not meant to be. Here we have checks and balances. This is a pan balance. There's two sides to the thing. So next slide. These are some of the checks and balances that avoid the GBC being a monarchy or a dictatorship. We have ISKCON's laws. We have a whole body. If you don't have it, any temple president, any leader should have a copy of the ISKCON resolutions, ISKCON laws. We can't just arbitrarily, the GBC can't just whimsically do this or that. They have to act within the guidelines of the ISKCON's laws. We're also just finishing a constitution. Prabhupada wanted it. Constitution explains what are the relationships, rights, and duties between different elements of an organization. So we have to work within the Constitution. There have to be regular performance reviews and assessments. Are the GBCs doing the job? Are they up to standard? So regular reviews and assessments. And each individual GBC is responsible to the entire GBC. That I'm a servant of the GBC body. They can remove me. They can do so many things. So there it is. These are some of the balances that help avoid it being an arbitrary dictatorship. Next. There are also more sublime principles. This is a volunteer movement. You know, people can walk out the door anytime they want. They're not here because of a salary. They're not here because of their benefits. They're not here because we've got a gun to their head. It's a voluntary movement. So there has to be mutual respect and mutual cooperation. We all have, this is Vaishnava Sangha. We want Sangha. Sankirtan means that we're all together. We're chanting together. So there has to be mutual respect and mutual cooperation. Next. This is a famous letter Prabhupada wrote early on, 1972, to Karandar. Karandar was one of his senior leaders, GBC member. So Prabhupada's writing, Krishna consciousness movement is for training men to be independently thoughtful and competent, not for bureaucracy. So independently thoughtful and competent. You know, so many, we have a Chinta Beta Beta Tattva, simultaneously one and different. And it's a cornerstone, it's the thread of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings, Achinta Beta Beta Tattva. So Prabhupada told me personally, Prabhupada said intelligence means the ability to balance opposing points within the mind. It's a great statement. It's Achinta Beta Beta Tattva, simultaneously one and different. Vyakta and avyakta. You know, I don't want to spend time on that. But the point is that the ability to balance apparently opposing points. So yes, we're all under the GBC. We all have our, this is how it works. But at the simultaneously, the other side of the coin is that there has to be room to be independently thoughtful, competent, not for making bureaucracy. Next. Prabhupada writes, our leaders, because I'm assuming that many of you are temple presidents, zonal secretaries like that. Our leaders shall be careful to not kill the spirit of enthusiastic service, which is individual, spontaneous, and voluntary. You know, Prabhupada was an author. I'm looking at the time. Prabhupada chose his words very carefully. Anyway, you can talk to Prabhupada's editors at the BBT. Prabhupada really thought about words. He knew they had power. So here Prabhupada says, the spirit of enthusiastic service. And what does that mean? Individual, spontaneous, and voluntary. So yes, we have to have organization. Yes, we have to have a control. Yes, when there's a discussion or a debate or a dissension or there's an argument, there has to be somebody that says, hey, that's it. This is the final decision. But simultaneously, it has to be balanced by this enthusiastic service, individual, spontaneous, and voluntary. Next. Okay, I assume we're at the next. And Prabhupada concludes, that is the art of management, to draw out spontaneous loving spirit, sacrificing some energy for Krishna. Next. Prabhupada hammered this point home. The test of our actual dedication and sincerity to serve the spiritual master will be in this mutual cooperation to push on this movement. I mean, you can say, I love you, Gurudev, 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 but all the other Vaishnavas you treat like chopped cabbage or, just insignificant. But the fact of the matter is the real test of our ability to be Goswamis and control our senses is that we know how to cooperate. We learn for the greater good of the mission. Let's get along. Next. And as I was saying, Prabhupada's driving this home from early days. Here we have in 1971, I request all of my disciples to work cooperatively, and I am sure our mission will advance without doubt. Prabhupada said we can never be destroyed from outside. We can only be destroyed from inside. If we stick together by following the principles, Vaishnava etiquette, respect, and cooperation, follow the GBC, we can never be stopped. We can move mountains. But if we dissension, like the Gaudiya Math, we can unravel to the point that the press is just used as a laundry rack for drying our copings. Next. And what are the duties of the GBC? Please be kind to the GBC. It is a very demanding service. So I'm going to lay out the duties, but be merciful to your GBCs. It's not easy. So scope of GBC service. Prabhupada's writing to Satsarupa Swami. You mentioned that you're no longer much occupied with seeing that the rent, the mortgage is paid. but GBC means to be occupied with everything in the zone. Next. You know, I was on a morning walk with Srila Prabhupada. What is our time? We go till 5:30? What do we do? Help me out. Oh, unembodied voice in the sky.
No. Embodied voice. You have to finish your presentation, and afterward we have some time for.
Okay, when do I have to finish my presentation by? How much longer do I have?
I will ask. Mandala Party, what time we should finish? Can you?
I probably need about another 20 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's okay, Maharaj. It's wonderful.
All right, so we'll carry on. So I want to tell a story. I was on a morning walk with Srila Prabhupada. I forget the year, 75, probably. And I was a young temple president. We had a small temple in a college town preaching to the university. And I don't know, we had maybe a dozen devotees, right? So I was feeling very puffed up. I was thinking, I'm a temple president. I'm very important. And so I'm on a walk with Prabhupada. And I asked Srila Prabhupada, what does it mean to be one of your temple presidents? What does it mean to be a temple president? And I was trying to get a compliment. I thought Prabhupada would say, oh, you're one of my generals on the front line. You're fighting for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I thought that's what he would say. Prabhupada stopped, planted his cane on the ground, sized me up, checked me out. And then he said to me, because I asked him, what does it mean to be in charge? He said, being in charge means if anything goes wrong, it's your fault. Which was actually very good. That was the actual instruction. Being in charge means you're responsible. Something goes wrong, it's your fault. So here Prabhupada is saying, how Satsrupa says, no, I'm just chanting and preaching. But Prabhupada says, no, you have to be in charge of everything. Here we go. It's not that now we are preachers, we can neglect all other points. No, the GBC member is supposed to know everything and anything about the conditions and situations of all matters within his jurisdiction. Next. So is it just bureaucracy? Is it just management of papers and deeds and wills and legal matters? No, it's not just about bureaucracy. That's part of it. Next. Prabhupada says they, the GBCs, must be ideal acharya-like. So we're not just managers, but we have to have strict sadhana. We have to know the Shastra. We have to be able to speak the words of Krishna. So you have to be both an expert manager and we have to be acharya-like. We have the role model of Jiva Goswami. He had all those wills, he had all those deeds, and yet he's writing the Sat Sandarbhas. Next. Prabhupada said, the GBC must keep the society as pure as possible and see that every member is following. That's the cornerstone instruction. Next. The GBC, the governing body commission's duty is therefore to see that every member is following the rules and regulations and chanting 16 rounds regularly on the beads. Prabhupada said everything rests on nice japa. Next. Also, he says here, so if ever you have questions or serious doubts about philosophy, you may ask the GBC or myself. So we have to be able to understand the philosophy and also, frankly, establish, here's the philosophy. That's our duty. Next. Now there is this question of how does the GBC go on? How are the GBC appointed? How do they go on? And there is a document that Prabhupada wrote establishing the GBC. It's called the Direction of Management, and it was written in 1970. Next. So it says here, the Direction of Management is from July of 1970. And in that Direction of Management, it says that the GBC will be elected by temple presidents. So there's elections by temple presidents for selecting the GBC in the direction of management, and note, established in August of 1970. But here we have Prabhupada writing in November, a few months later. Thus, even that early, just a few months after establishing the direction of management, Prabhupada was going a different way than outlined in the direction of management. So what was that different direction? Prabhupada writes to Rupanuga Prabhu. Next. Prabhupada writes, he's writing to Rupanuga, who is the chairman of the GBC at the time. Regarding Bali Mardan, he has not resigned, and until he or some other member does, so there shall be not any changes in the membership of the GBC. If there is such resignation, the candidates will be Gaur Sundar, Mukunda, or Gurudas for replacement, and Prabhupada writes, by the vote of the remaining GBCs. So although the direction of management written by Prabhupada in August of 70 says there'll be election by the temple presidents, here a few months later, Prabhupada's writing by vote of the remaining members of the GBC. Next. Srila Prabhupada wrote to Karandar in July 19th, 1973. So this is Prabhupada's feeling about these things. Democracy in spiritual affairs is not at all good, but breeds power politics. We should be very careful of power politics. What this means is, first off, we're dealing with levels of realization. One has a deeper understanding of the teachings of Krishna, the will of the previous acharyas, what is Krishna's intent. That develops as one advances in spiritual life. You can't have Bhakta Ivan, who's been in the temple 2 months, his vote, his opinion is the same as some devotee who's, been chanting Hare Krishna and following the principles for a decade or 20 or 30 years. They're not on the same level of realization. So that's one thing. There's level of realization. The other thing is, if everything is by vote of majority, then one panders. If in the American legal system, the federal judges, the top judges, are appointed for life. And the reason they're appointed for life is they can't be removed. Therefore, they can say, they can, if they do something criminal or something like that, they can be removed. But as long as they're, a good citizen, they can't be removed. And that way they can speak, as they say in America, truth to power. They can make an unpopular decision. If that decision is right, if that decision is true, they're not going to be moved by, what the riot on the street is. They're going to stay true to principles. So elections, you have to pander. I need 51%. I need 60% to favor me. So I've got to please them. I've got to give them a favor. I've got to do all kinds of power politics so I stay in my position. So elections breed power politics. And one can't speak truth to power. Okay, next. Now we've moved up to 1975. We've been moving, in each of these cases, we're moving through the history. So you can see that it's a continuum. So in 1975, Srila Prabhupada guided the GBC in the conduct of its first formal annual general meeting. Prabhupada said that everyone should come to the Gaur Purnim festival as far as possible, the festival in Mayapur, Gaur Purnim festival, and the GBC should meet at that time. And the auspicious vibration of the holy Dham, the GBC should meet. So the first time they did this officially is 1975. So at that first formal annual general meeting in Mayapur, Prabhupada instituted parliamentary procedures. And in the first session, he voted along with everyone else to show it how it was to be done. He caused the resolutions to be passed. Whatever resolutions were agreed on, Prabhupada had them kept in a minutes book, and he had it recorded and signed by the secretary. And Prabhupada personally signed off on the resolutions passed. So this was not a light thing. I'm going to make a point about GBC and elections. We're still on that thread. But the point is, at the first formal meeting, Prabhupada's participating. He's having all the resolutions. I was there. I saw Prabhupada. They read out all the resolutions. Prabhupada would make some corrections. Maybe he'd make some changes. Maybe he'd say yes. Prabhupada raised his hand to vote along with the other GBC members. So in that meeting, the fifth, so this is 1975, the first resolution recorded in the minutes book, the fifth, I'm sorry, repeals the provision for GBC elections in the direction of management. So here, although Prabhupada never implemented it, he, in a few months after the direction of management, he said the GBC will be appointed by the existing members of the GBC. But here in 1975, he officially repeals elections. Next. This is the resolve. The selection of GBC members is that Srila Prabhupada will nominate. And if there's any discrepancy, His Divine Grace will change him. There will be no elections, and the present GBCs will remain. So read and approved by Srila Prabhupada, and here it is, no elections. Next. And you can see here, I don't know if you can see on the screen, but this is Prabhupada's signature. So this is the next year, 1976. Prabhupada was signing the minutes. Next. And there's no doubt about it. So then just to the final drive the point home, in Prabhupada's last days, Prabhupada called the GBC to Vrindavan. And he asked them, do you have any remaining questions? Any questions? Devotees asked, how will your books, the Bhagavatam will be finished? How will initiations go on after you've left, physically departed? And how will the GBC go on? There's a series of questions, and it's all recorded. You can hear the tape. So in that, this is March 28, 1977. It's all recorded. Here's the transcript. Next. Satsrupa Swami asks, so our first question is about GBC members. We want to know how long should they remain in office? Prabhupada says they should remain for good. Next. Srila Prabhupada. So there's no question of changing GBCs. Satsrupa says no. Prabhupada says rather, one who is competent, he can be selected to act by the board of the GBC. So after Prabhupada's gone, someone who's up to the job, they can be selected by the GBC. There's no election. Next. And finally, yeah, here we go. Finally, again, in that, in Prabhupada's will, we were reading from Prabhupada's will. This is dated June 1977. The second provision, the first one says the GBC will be the ultimate managing authority. The next line is the system of management will continue as it is now, and there's no need of any change. So it's not that, okay, well, Prabhupada had the GBC selecting new members of the GBC, but in the future, there'll be elections. After Prabhupada's gone, then there can be election. But Prabhupada doesn't say that. Prabhupada in his will, knowing it's a legally binding document, his last statement and instruction to his disciples, it says the system of management, which is Prabhupada nominating, and then the GBC members electing, the system of management will continue as it is now, and there's no need for any change. Next. We're going to get towards wrapping up now. Why does all of this matter? Why is it important? What you're looking at here are the landing lights at an airport. When a plane is coming in, it sees these lights. Of course, there's radar and other things, but the primary thing is they focus on these lights. The lights help safely land the airplane. It doesn't go to the left, it doesn't go to the right, but it knows where it's aiming. So these instructions keep ISKCON on course. Next. We have to remember the whole Gaudiya Math unraveled because it gave up the principle of GBC. If you have a piece of cloth and you pull out a thread, like the protam and otam, warp and woof, the whole fabric unravels. So this principle of the GBC is holding ISKCON together. It is one of the cornerstone principles. It's not the only one, sadhana, so many other things, but philosophy, but it is a cornerstone. Next. This is Srila Prabhupada, only 9 days before his departure. Prabhupada says, and it's taped, the institution depends on the GBC. Just like that thread or those landing lights. The institution holding this worldwide institution, all different types of personalities, different cultures, different mentalities. What holds the thread together, the thread that holds it together is the GBC principle. Next. So remember that our narration began with Srila Prabhupada sitting alone in Vrindavan. He didn't even have enough money for more than 3 worn out dhotis. He was living on the sales of his Srimad Bhagavatam and the mercy of Krishna. And here we have him meditating on how am I going to go to the West and what happened to the Gaudiya Math. Again, if you read that Vrindavan Bhajan, Prabhupada really explains, what was the mentality that unraveled the Gaudiya Math. And so Prabhupada's thinking, I'm going to go to the West. He was directly inspired by Rupa Goswami. You go to the West and we'll take care of everything. So Prabhupada had the darshan of Rupa Goswami. He knew that he was going to succeed by the mercy of Krishna, but how to avoid it unraveling. And the key principle is the GBC. Next. So our storyline ends after being all alone in Vrindavan. He comes to the West, the impossible mission is accomplished. And our story ends with Prabhupada as a world-renowned scholar with temples and followers all over the world. Next. Following Srila Prabhupada's GBC system is both a gift and a test given to us by his divine grace. It's a gift because it's the way to, like, what is it, Krishna? All things rest on me like pearls on a thread. Krishna says in the Gita, Matapartharam nanyat kinchit asti dhananjaya. So everything, that thread that holds the necklace of pearls together, that following the GBC is a gift. It's allowed ISKCON to stay together through so many trials and tribulations. It's held our society together. And it's also a test. I may want to do my own thing. I want to do this. I want to do that. No, I want to install deities. Okay, there's a standard for installing deities. Oh, I heard something from the Radhakund Babajis. I want to, give everyone Siddha Pranali. I'm going to, at your initiation, I'll tell you what your Siddha Swarup is. No, that's not. So the point is, it's a test because we have to comport to that. We have to stay within the parameters of the guidelines of the GBC. So it's a test, but it's also a profound gift because it's kept the worldwide society of Krishna consciousness, ISKCON, frankly, the world's best hope. It's kept ISKCON together. Next. Following this GBC principle, doing so is essential to sustain ISKCON as one institution, instead of shattering off into a whole bunch of confederation, little groups that try to cooperate. No, as one institution, to keep it under the shelter of Prabhupada's instructions, in line with his transcendental vision and powerfully delivering the mercy of Shri Shri Gaur Nitai to the world. Money from the West got India rolling. When the USA was under the brainwashing, money from India helped save us and settle the thing. Recently, there was COVID. Money from all over the world pumped into India to help the devotees. So we have internationally, when there's been an emergency, our God brothers and God sisters from around the world, all different temples have combined together to help. So this working together, worldwide institution, it has allowed ISKCON to accomplish so much. And the thread that holds it together is the GBC. Next. I think we have 2 slides and we're done. All right, this next one is Prabhupada's writing, again, towards his last months with us. Your love for me will be tested by how, after my departure, you maintain this institution. Prabhupada said that ISKCON is my body. And again, as I was saying, it is the will, our previous acharyas, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the 6 Goswamis, all of our acharyas, they wanted to see so that Krishna consciousness can go to every town and village. It requires an organization, a worldwide powerful institution. And then Prabhupada said, you can say, oh, I love Prabhupada, oh, I'm this and that. But how are you maintaining his institution? How are we holding together the boat that will carry the conditioned souls across the ocean of birth and death? It is a profound responsibility that we leaders carry to maintain Prabhupada's ISKCON, to deliver the conditioned souls. And a key to that maintenance is the GBC principle. Next. So that's the last slide. It's not a fabrication. It's not an imagination. It's not a controlling, autocracy. It is the desire of Srila Prabhupada, which is the desire of his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, which is the expression of the will of the 6 Goswamis, which is the expression of the will of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So thank you very much. That's my presentation. We can see if there's any questions.
Yes, Maharaj, thank you very much. This is just Russian.
Also, I should mention that there is a GBC paper that comes with this. Okay. And I can send that to you. It is our legacy paper. So this PowerPoint is a presentation of that paper. So I'll send that to you. I have an updated version. So remind me and I'll send that to you.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes, we have some questions. Sorry, Russian translation little bit delayed, and with some pause it was in between slide. But anyway, we have some questions.
I'm just grateful. I am grateful that mature devotees like you, we've never met. We're tens of thousands miles apart, but you've given your life to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission, and so have I. And that we're working together to deliver the conditioned souls and to maintain Prabhupada's ISKCON. It is very moving to me, frankly.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Gaur Krishna Prabhu, I have some questions. Please go, Krishna Prabhu. Go ahead.
I hope I have some answers.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhupada.
Thank you. My old friend. How are you? Nice to see you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Long time no see. Hare Krishna.
So I have few questions. Thank you for your presentation because it's clear a lot of things. And
can we take one question at a time? Because your questions are packed with many things. So let's take one question at a time.
Okay. Everyone is without doubt that Prabhupada, they like the GBC, and GBC is this collegial organ body with many people. And still discussion is going on. What is better, and single acharya or in this? Could you please, for our further discussion in the group, say just a list of the why collegial body of GBC or this institution is more benefit for the future of the movement? Like, no. Why?
Well, Prabhupada said this. Prabhupada gave the example.
Maharaj, I probably should I translate in Russian or is
Madana Mahan will translate? I think so.
Okay.
Because translate was
going simultaneously.
Okay.
Yes. The Prabhupada gave the example of the Pandavas. He gave several examples, but the example of the Pandavas, Prabhupada said each brought a particular skill set. And it was the combination that made of course, ultimately it's Krishna's mercy, no doubt. But Prabhupada said that combination, that they worked together, each of them had a particular skill set. allowed them to succeed in the Kurukshetra war. Prabhupada said, each of you individually, he said, individually, you may fall down, you may not have a complete idea, but combined together, it's that combination. Each brings something to the table. And you sat in on GBC meetings. I've been a GBC trying to do my job since 1987. And I've seen, someone's very good at understands a philosophical point. Someone else is very good at management. Someone else understands human relationships. And it's the combination that, hones and molds the final decision. And they're better decisions. And sometimes, Prabhupada said, one of you can be wrong, two of you can be wrong, but you can't all be wrong. So it's the combination, collective, and it says in Kali Yuga, people should work collectively. So it's a principle of the age. It comes from Srila Prabhupada, and I personally have seen it's that combination of different natures, different experiences that provides the best decision. Prabhupada also gave the example of the Chinese analogy that if you have a father is instructing his sons, and he gives them a stick, and you can break an individual stick very easily. You combine them together as a bundle, then you can't break those sticks. So Prabhupada said that when you work collectively, you're much stronger and you make better decisions. So that's the principle. Okay, do we have another question? We can come back to it if there's no other question, but let's take one from you and then see who else has a question. Anybody else have a question? Otherwise, we come back to you.
Rajendra Kumar Prabhu, can you translate questions from chat?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, my name is Rajendra Kumar Das, and I was asked to translate questions from Russian into English from this chat. So
thank you.
Question is from Pavana Prabhu. He said that I completely accept the authority of GBC and all other regional councils like this, but in the small temples, isn't it more practical that just one person, temple president, runs the whole show? Otherwise, we can get into some bureaucracy. And he's asking, what was Srila Prabhupada's vision? Should the council run the temple, or maybe temple president alone can run the temple?
That's something you got. My mission is to explain about the GBC. That you can deal with yourself locally. I can give you one example. We had a temple president. He's grown. But he used to be quite heavy. And here was a turning point. Are we translating simultaneously? I can keep going. I think so.
Yes.
So he didn't like the way the pujari was doing the worship. It was a Gornatai temple. So he didn't like the way he was doing the worship. So he removed the pujari. I'll do it myself. He didn't like the way the cook was cooking the burfi. So he removed him. I'll do it myself. And in this way, he gradually emptied the building and he had to do everything himself. And he realized, hey, this isn't working. I need these other devotees if I'm going to do my service. So any intelligent leader knows that he has to work the other devotees. Like Prabhupada said, it's voluntary, it's spontaneous. So devotees have to be inspired, they have to be encouraged. Prabhupada said the goal of management is to find the spark and fan it. So, the devotees have to feel loved and respected. They have to trust their leaders. Otherwise, they're not going to follow. So there's that side of again, it's simultaneously one and different. It is not black or white. A good leader knows how to inspire and encourage. Prabhupada was sitting on the stage one time in France, and it was in the middle of the student revolutions, power to the people, communism, the whole thing, right? And Prabhupada, truth to power, Prabhupada was speaking about the Varnashram system. There's 4 social orders. And this was just the exact opposite. We're all one and there should be no hierarchy. So you can hear the tape. In the audience, a rabble rouser, a student stands up and says, because Prabhupada's explaining there's 4 orders. Social orders, like that. So the student stands up and starts shouting at Prabhupada, and I suppose you think you're first class. I suppose you think you're first class. And Prabhupada, you can hear on the tape, he's almost crying. Prabhupada says, no. Prabhupada says, I am a 5th class. I'm a servant of all the other 4 classes. And Prabhupada says it with such feeling, the entire audience bursts into applause. So, a leader is a servant. And he has to inspire by his personal example. Otherwise, why are the devotees going to do what he says? At the same time, sometimes a leader means you have to lead. You have to say, no, we're going to do this. You have to explain your reasons. You have to have Shastra. You have to be in comporting with instructions of the previous acharyas. Sure. But a leader, sometimes you need a leader who makes a decision. So I'm not going to speak, an absolute principle. You have to have a counselor, Chanakya Pandit says, a king without good advisors soon comes to ruin. A king without good advisors soon comes to ruin. So a temple president who doesn't take advice and counsel, he usually gets himself into trouble. At the same time, he hears all the different advice and he makes a decision. So that's the most I'm going to say on that one. Next.
Next question is from Yugavatara Prabhu. He is saying that Srila Prabhupada gave a clear instruction that system of management should not be changed. But still we see that GBC regularly is doing some reforms, adding something like, introducing Sabha and some other committees. So to what degree these changes are permissible? What do you think?
Prabhupada also said, he said one GBC can have many secretaries. Prabhupada's, assistants. Prabhupada never established zonal supervisors. He never established, regional governing bodies. So this is all speculation. And no, because if you have, and there were only 15 GBC members, 12 to 15. You try to have 12 members of the GBC run this work. We have so many temples, we can't even keep track of them. We had to start the Global Property Division, which now, manages and makes, registers all the properties. So we'd actually know schools, farms. There's over 500, 600 schools and farms, temples, ashrams. So, as the society grows to serve the devotees better, we establish zonal supervisors. We have regional governing bodies, but those are details. It's not that we've gone, a single acharya system or, elections of everybody. So the general principles have remained the same, and the details, an intelligent person adjusts the details.
Okay. Thank you. Next question is from Dayal.
Otherwise, there's just so many examples. There was no deity ministry. Should we not have a deity ministry? Go ahead.
Okay. Next question is from Dayal Nitai Das. He is asking that sometimes in one region, some sannyasi is preaching, some guru is preaching, and some GBC, and these people can be all different GBC, different sannyasi, different gurus, and sometimes there is some misunderstanding and different opinions regarding the management in a particular region. How do all these people of power, sannyasis, GBC, and guru should cooperate to make decisions in a particular region?
I agree with you. You want me to say more? The thing is that, we always get these, we do not live in a perfect world. If we're Krishna conscious, that part is perfect. I was sitting in Prabhupada's room. Prabhupada said, spiritual movement in the material world, difficult proposal. So we're trying to, and one of the symptoms of the age of Kali is it says in the Bhagavatam, even amongst natural allies, father and son, brother and brother, husband and wife, in the age of Kali, there will be tension. It's just the nature of the place. So there's different opinions, and that's why we've got a hierarchy. You either, I don't know exactly how your Russian yatra is structured, but I'm sure you have regional councils, and the regional council can, if it's a detail, whether to make blueberry halva with ghee, or whether you have to use butter, or whether it, work it out. That doesn't matter if there's different opinions. If it's really a serious issue, we have our hierarchy. You go to your national council, you go to your regional council. I think there's a GBC council for Russia. I know we have the North American GBC. You have the Euro GBC. You have the Australian GBC. So, you work your way up. And ultimately it comes to the international GBC. We have ＩСККОN Resolve. That if it's an interpersonal thing, between two yatras or whatever it is, two leaders, we have ＩСККОN Resolve. We have to work within the system. But it's not that, we're going to wave a magic wand or say a mantra and everyone's going to work together perfectly and there's not going to be any friction. Dream on. That's even in the spiritual world, there's competition and differences of opinion. There's left-wing gopis, right-wing gopis. I mean, there it's perfectly manifest. But so, I mean, devotees are always asking for these, magic bullet, secret key, one mantra, and everything is smooth sailing for the rest of life. But that's not really, the world doesn't work like that. I mean, Prabhupada was repeatedly, continually putting out fires. Devotees went off the track all the time. There were differences of opinions. And Prabhupada was repeatedly, there was fratricidal war. He had to send Tamal Krishna Maharaj to China. So don't think that if there's dissension or difference of opinions, then we're all in Maya and where's God and, Hare Krishna doesn't work. No, that's ridiculous. The fact that we've made it this far is a miracle. That's what we should be amazed about, that we're still here together. We've avoided the Gaudiya Math shattered within years. And here we are 50 years later, working together. It is a miracle. That's what we should meditate on. And there's difference of opinions. You work within the system and you sort it out. Sorry, there's no better answer. You got another question?
Yes, next question is from Ishana Prabhu, the temple president of Sochi temple. He said that I like what you say about this GBC system, but sometimes we see that people completely ignore the GBC resolutions and even the resolutions of some local council. And in ИСККОN, there is no practical system of punishment or censorship, or we can say, well,
we do have a system, but yeah, let me say this first.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Yeah, we don't live in a perfect world. I was sitting with Niranjana Swami one time. You know Niranjana Swami, right? Completely saintly, blissful person. So I was sitting with him and he said, Maharaj, check this out. And he was reading a letter from one of his disciples. And the letter said, that starts off, oh, Gurudev, you're the lotus of my life. You're the light of the sun and the moon. All the phrases there. Then the devotee got down to his real business. He said, I know you told me to do this, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this. I know you told me to stay here, but I'm going there. I know. Completely contradictory of what he'd been instructed. And then the devotee closed the letter, please give me your blessings. So Niranjana Swami said, what do I do with this letter? If I give him my blessings, he's going right off a cliff. It's not going to be good for him. He shouldn't do it. But if I don't tell him to do, if I don't, say, okay, he's going to do it anyway. And then it's gur aparat. How do I answer this letter? So people, devotees do all kinds of things. It's the nature of, hey, we left the spiritual world. We turned our back on Krishna and misused our independence and came to this world. You don't think we're going to do other stupid things and disagree? Show me the seamless logic of that. So, we do have, if it's a big deal, if you don't get along in this temple, you go to another temple. You don't get along in this service, you go to do another service, You don't get along with the devotees. I had a devotee, he'd been in 5 different temples. And he said, you know, something's wrong with the devotees. I can never get along with them. I said, did you ever think that maybe you've got the problem? You know, 5 different sets of devotees, 5 different temples. He couldn't get along with anyone. It's not that they were all wrong. He was wrong. You know, he had to adjust his mentality. So, you know, small things, people can shift around. They can do different services, fine. If they're really outrageous, we do have a system in ISKCON. If you get an ISKCON law book, one can be censured after a certain number of censures. One can be suspended after a suspension, you know, with steps they need to take to remedy. One can be expelled from ISKCON. Now, devotees are extremely, generally speaking, my observation, they put up with me all these years, devotees are extremely tolerant, and they do not like to throw people out of ISKCON or, you know, throw them out of temple. We try to work with people. And that's the devotee's kindness. But there is a system. Now, whether you use it or not, that's your choice. But there is a system. There's both an appeal. You appeal to the temple president. You appeal to the regional body. You appeal to the national council. You know, there's a way of doing things. If you don't use it, that's your problem. But there are systems.
So I don't see any more questions in the chat.
Okay, Gaur Krishna, you had some. Gaur Krishna.
Yes, yes.
We can always count on you for questions.
First of all, just short question. There is any difference between English meaning for good and for life? Because you mentioned that GBC is selected for
life.
Good. And sometimes they also mentioned for life. But there is any difference of this essential difference?
Prabhupada qualified it. Prabhupada said, as long as they are fit.
Okay.
So as long as the person, you know, we're not going to be like Taiwan, you know, the free China, when they had people that 80 years old, 90 years old, they're on a gurney, they've got a drip from the hospital, and they wheel them in, and the guy doesn't even know where he is. No, they have to be able to do the job. As long as they can do the job and they're, you know, strictly following all the principles and able to perform. Prabhupada did not say that automatically because you're 70 years old or 65 you automatically retire. You know, I find that most of the GBCs, when they get to a certain level, they like to retire. You know, and we have a bunch of new GBCs. You know, we have Radha Krishna Prabhu is taken over for Shiva Ram Maharaj. We've got our Devaki Nandana. We've got, you know, in Singapore, Southeast Asia, we've got Gauranga Prabhu, who's taking over some duties for Radhanath Maharaj and becoming an active GBC in India. So we have it, and there's others. So we're gradually, you know, replacing GBCs. But as long as they can do the job, Prabhupada didn't want, you know, automatic. There is wisdom in time and experience. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes. This means K word is functionality, right? K.
Yeah, competency, functionality, that they're doing a nice job and all that. All right, we've been here for an hour and a half. Should we wrap up? You guys are the boss. What should we do? I can tell one more story that I like. What should we do?
Yes, yes. It's for me. It's fine. If you thought I like your stories. You're great story.
All right, so I'm just thinking we'll just end with one thing, because the reason I'm thinking about it is we should stop, as I'm sure you all do. Well, I'll just say it. Prabhupada was in Calcutta. Tamal Krishna Maharaj told me this. At our Calcutta temple. And there was a life member, his name was Tarun Kanti Ghosh. And he came in a Vaishnav line. I think his grandfather was initiated by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So, and this Mr. Ghosh had been to see a yogi. And the yogi, zoop, by mystic power, made an apple. And the man was wearing a gamsha, nothing up his sleeves, bare chested. Zoop, by Prapti City, he had made an apple. So Tarun Kanti Ghosh kept talking to Prabhupada, oh, there was no apple, then there was an apple, and he just was wearing a gamsha, he made it, kept going on apple, apple, apple. And Prabhupada was explaining that, he gave a nice Krishna conscious answer, okay, but what's the perfection of yoga? And all. The guy didn't get any of it. Then he was so impressed by this yogi who made an apple. So Prabhupada said, Prabhupada was humility personified. We could give a whole class on Prabhupada's humility. But sometimes as a teacher, Prabhupada had to assert himself. So this man was going on apple, apple, apple. And Prabhupada said, sir, I came to America with nothing. Prabhupada had 40 rupees, which you could not even convert into an American bank. All he had was the money he got from the captain of the Jaladuta for selling a Bhagavatam. It's the only money Prabhupada had. So Prabhupada said, all I had was the faith in the order of my spiritual master and the Hare Krishna mantra, faith in the holy name. So Prabhupada sat down in Tompkins Square Park with a pair of kartals all by himself, and he chanted. He had no contacts, he had no money, he had no support, and he simply began chanting the holy name. And Prabhupada said, from that chanting, so many devotees came. So many books came. So many deities came. So many festivals, Rathayatras all over the world. Prabhupada said, so many temples came. And then Prabhupada said, and in every temple, there are so many apples. Apple chutney, apple halava, apple fruit salad. So, this guy's impressed you make one apple. But Prabhupada opened temples all over the world. There were so many editions of Bhagavad Gita, they didn't make a single devotee. Prabhupada comes, translates Bhagavad Gita, and all of a sudden devotees are popping up all over the planet. Never met anybody, never met a devotee, never been to a temple, read Bhagavad Gita and became a devotee. I mean, it's just phenomenal. So we should always remember our great good fortune. This movement is going on by the mercy of Krishna alone. It's described in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, when he's Vishvambar, and he explains what the meaning of Vishvambar is in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And it says, Krishnadas Kaviraj writes that Lord Chaitanya brought the desire tree of devotional service and sprinkled on it the water of his will. Sprinkled on it the water of his will. So this movement is going on by the will of the previous acharyas, and we have the greatest good fortune to participate in. We can reach the perfection of nirjana bhajana, perfection of meditation, by the performance of the Sankirtan mission. We don't have to sit like the yogis of the past, in the summertime with 4 fires on either side, and in the winter up to our neck in ice cold water. We don't have to perform those tapasyas. Our tapasya is that we have to work together. We have to keep this institution together. We have to take good care of the devotees. We have to protect Prabhupada's philosophy. That's our austerity. And by that austerity, we will capture the mercy of the previous acharyas and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it is, as I said, it's both a test and a gift. Okay. We should end there. I got to go. So, right? All right, Prabhus. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. And all glories to ISKCON Russia.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Maharaj.
And that's coming from an American capitalist. I offer my full respects for the power of the Russian Yatra. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Он внезапно покинул нас. Как Кофе говорит про Кришну. Нам осталось только вспоминать. И Ну что, наверное, мы-то, я не знаю, я как вроде бы тоже этот самый, вроде как соведущий, мне, правда, не сказали, что... я не знаю, это осталось несколько вопросов, и я стандартно попросили бы мы, вот, ну, для себя, вот, если вы будете скидывать, мы не будем, наверное, делать работу в группах, наверное, не знаю, как это сейчас организовать, но, пожалуйста, обратную связь, там вот здесь стандартные вопросы, на какая основная тема, по-вашему, была, то есть раскрыта, получили ли вы ответ на свой этот основной запрос, и что бы вы хотели дальше обсудить, вот уже в наших группах, вот в рабочем порядке, потому что мы вот то, что сейчас происходит, это, наверное, уникальная возможность, то, что вот вряд ли еще раз удастся так собрать всех, вот так вот, да, и вот то, что они скажут, потом этот материал будет проработкой для следующих, может быть, курсов там, и имеется в виду потоков, да, людей, которые будут слушать, и мы что-то будем для себя отвечать, доводить до полного ответа, поэтому, пожалуйста, вот эту обратную связь после, в общем-то, каждой такой лекции, то есть какая основная тема была, какие ответы вы получили на эту тему, на какой основной запрос вы ответили, вам, ну, то есть было, какие ответы получили, и что хотелось бы дальше обсудить. То есть вот, допустим, у меня вот даже есть вопросы, которые я бы очень хотел бы обсудить и с Махараджем, и просто в рабочих группах, и вот с преданными, все-таки как мы здесь будем это все эти идеи воплощать, которые они здесь говорят, и так далее. Ну вот, наверное, вот на этом, наверное, я бы остановился, и, наверное, на этом можем закончить, да, потому что все уже. Так что всем Хари Кришна, всем
Харе Кришна.
удачи.